welcome to this episode. We are speaking with Tash Leam, and we are talking about personal development. She's a personal development author and has released a book and is on her way to releasing her second one. I'm so excited to read that one. Welcome, Tash.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Oh, no worries. I am really excited to dive into this topic. We're going to approach it from like the broader perspective and go into all the deep angles I assume with all of our conversations previous is going to be a
Why
good
should this
one.
be any exception?
Yeah. We're just going to throw out the hard truths as well, like we were talking about. Um, but yeah, first off, I would love to just ask you about your book. Like, please tell us a little bit about it and yeah, with your first one, and then we'll get into the second one.
So my first one is called From Human Being to Human, sorry, From Human Doing to Human Being. I remember when it first came out, it was published and it had like the title the wrong way around. So I think it just like messes with my brain now. Um, just fun things with publishing. So the book was really just something that I wrote out of reading a lot of books when I first got into personal development. And I felt like there wasn't really anything that was written for someone that was just kind of fresh on their journey. There was a lot of books from people that are very successful and have like kind of, reached a few mountaintops. And I was like, I just feel like there's something missing for someone that's starting out. So the intention behind it was just to give people an opportunity to pick up the book. There's some activities in there and there's some bite-sized chapters about different personal development topics, just to give you an idea of, different things that you can implement into your life, and you can kind of take what you need at that point in time. Like we were talking about before, like with personal development, it's just, I equate it to being in a swimming pool. You start in the shallow end and then you move to the deeper end and hope you don't drown, which is very morbid. But it's such a, you can go as deep as you want to go with it. And yeah, I think that's one of the things I love about it and why I wanted to write a book on it.
Yeah, that's definitely the most enticing about it. You can keep going and going. There are a few of us that get kind of lost in it, right? Sometimes you're constantly working on yourself instead of taking action in like parts of your life.
Yeah,
Because you're like, surely there's another block in the way and I can work on that here. So it is a fine balance and a fine line.
for
Yeah,
sure.
amazing. Okay, so I'm personally curious, like, so right now you're a personal development author, but like I just want to know what were you like when you were younger?
Younger, I was pretty introverted and admittedly still am. Um, I take that to being a Libra. It's just very few people know me very well. And those that do, I kind of feel sorry for.
I know you well and I like
I'll
you.
like either not talk or just like talk your ear off. There's like really no in between. But I was just someone that really was drawn to like quotes and like song lyrics and just really like in my own space. And I think when I like finally kind of found personal development, like it just really like something just like hit home for me with that. And I was like, oh, that explains so much why I've always like loved words and like really resonated with other people that can like put into words like the feelings and emotions that you have, but you can't articulate it as well as they can. And I think there's just, that's something I've always been kind of drawn to, is just like if you're going through like, good or bad things, that other people have experienced something, while it may not be exactly the same as you, like you're not alone with that. And I think that's something that really helped get me through like my childhood and growing up and things like that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I actually, there's so much value in personal development. I wish it was something we introduced to younger people. Hopefully, we do that now. But yeah, we didn't get any of that when we were younger. And I feel like we're all searching for that answer or something that really shows us like you're going through this and this is normal. There's nothing for us. There was nothing for us at least.
yeah. And then we just kind of had to like figure it out ourselves.
Yeah, no wonder millennials are all like spiritual now.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So, like, in comparison, are you a lot different now, or
I don't know. I'd say probably pretty similar, but just more connected with myself in
yeah,
terms of, I'm a lot more settled in who I am. And I think personal development has been such a like powerful outlet where it's just, I think I can't remember who I can attribute this quote to, but we're kind of told that as you move through life, you kind of are like, discovering new things about yourself and maybe putting things on. But I prefer looking at it as you go through life as kind of like chipping away the layers, and then you discover yourself that way. It's like you've always been there. It's just you've just kind of got to unpack it rather than the other way of like discovering yourself. I think it's just a different way of looking at that journey of self-discovery. But I'm a lot more settled in who I am, and I guess it's just connecting those dots backwards and being like, oh, this is why I've gone through these things and this is what it's taught me, and it's just made me more me.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I think along the way we pick up a lot of other people's ways that we should be, or like thoughts on ways that we should be, and we kind of get lost along the way. So yeah, that's beautiful. Chip away at it instead. Um, cool. I love it so much. So then what do you think? Like, what does personal development mean to you?
Really just depends. I think when I first kind of started on my journey back in 2017, it looked a lot different to what it does now. Um, and I think it's one of those very subjective things. Like you can have a holistic definition of it, but it's going to mean a different thing depending on where you're at. But I think the best way that I see it is it's a journey, and you can kind of pick up and like take time to there's time for action, and then there's time for like digesting information, and then kind of seeing where you're at and then reevaluating. But I think it's just a really good tool or guide to help you navigate life. And I think just check in with yourself. I think for me, I was like, maybe people would have less midlife crises if they, kind of went on their own journey of personal development, because rather than getting halfway through your life and being like, what am I doing? Who am I? Like, what am I living for? You can ask those questions throughout your life. And I think it's just that way to kind of just have that reflection and introspection and just kind of like check in with yourself and be like, am I actually happy? Like, rather than being on autopilot all the time.
Yeah, how interesting is that that people end up in midlife crisis, and we've been looking at it like it's such a normal thing, like it's to be expected. But when we could have
Yeah.
just looked back at the start of it and been like, okay, what can we fix at the beginning of their life so that they don't end up here questioning themselves? It's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, personal development is very broad. Um, so when you were starting, what was your personal development kind of like versus what it is now? What kind of angles are you approaching it from?
I mean, back in 2017, I had no idea of human design. And I know this is something that we've talked about previously. For those who kind of know a little bit about it, I'm like a 1-3 profile. So, like the experimenter and the like knowledge kind of sharer. Um, I think when I first started out, I was just totally in like the acquisition of knowledge phase. I just digested as many books as I could on the topic, and my mind was just blown. And I was just, it, I haven't been so passionate about anything else in my life, I think, other than food, maybe. But, but it just is so hard to articulate. It just felt like coming home. There was just this massive like realization of like, there's just this whole topic out here, and I felt like everyone should know about it, but I was like, I can't force people to like look at themselves if they're not ready. But yeah, I was just like, reading books, and then I'm like, okay, cool, I'll take this from it, and then I'm going to try and implement that. So it was just kind of a mixture of like reading, digesting information, and then trialing it. And I think that's how my first book kind of came about, was just like that process of like the trial and error, and then sharing like my experiences with things from that as well. So it kind of all flowed into like one another. In terms of where I'm at on my journey now, I think I've taken off the floaties, if we go back to the swimming pool analogy, and it's just kind of seeing where I go in terms of like the depth. You know, sometimes I might be floating on top of the water and just kind of looking up and just seeing, you know, like where do I want to go? Other times I'm kind of like swimming quite well. Other times it's probably more like a doggy paddle, like just being like, what's happening
Occasional
here?
drowning moment. Yeah.
Yeah, like try not to panic, but panic. So it's just, I think it really depends. But I think now it's less like research because I feel more confident in terms of the tools that I have. So it's just kind of seeing what comes up, and then I'm like, cool, how can I navigate this? Like, what do I have in my toolbox, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you figure out your human design? Because okay, so you were doing all the research. I'm 1-3 as well. And there's a whole episode on human design for anyone that's confused.
Read it, please. I mean,
Yeah.
read it, listen to it. Oh my gosh.
Listen to it. Yeah. um, but essentially, yeah. So like you can get stuck in the researching and then you need something to like catalyst you into the trial and error. Essentially, you can stay in that comfort zone of just researching for both of us. And I think that's true for a lot of people, but I think we're just very intense at that part.
Yeah.
um so like when in your journey did you find human design, and was that like the switch that made you go from researching to doing, or was there something earlier?
I think I discovered human design a couple of years ago. I
Mm.
had a reading after I did like a manifestation course, and I was just like, whoa, this is so cool. And I think if I had discovered human design at the same time that I began my journey, I think I wouldn't find it as valuable, because I think it's an amazing self-awareness tool. And maybe you'll agree with me on this, but I feel like it's when you know yourself on a deeper level and are beginning to unpack things, that you can kind of use human design and be like, oh, this explains like why I felt this when, and all of that. It's kind of like a confirmation, I guess, of like past behaviors in a sense. And you can then again add it to like your toolbox and be like, cool. So if I'm like, for me, my not self theme is like frustration. So I can look back at times and be like, oh, that explains so much. And then there's like the feeling of like satisfaction or contentedness. And I'm like, oh, cool. This is where I need to be right now. Whereas if that didn't like take me into like taking action and things like that, but I think it's just given me like an appreciation of like who I am, and you know, using that to help guide my journey. um in terms of taking action, I probably read like 40 books or something like that in like the first year. And I'd take like little bits from it. um but the action that I took didn't really start to stick probably until like 2018, 2019, if I'm being completely honest. Like I do bits here and there, just as, you know, like maybe like mini experiments, but I didn't really commit to myself and the journey until like a little bit later on. I think I needed to, you know, I was in that comfort zone in terms of like the knowledge acquisition. I was like, oh, this feels really good. And I was like, I don't need to do anything about it. I just know this now. And then I was like, no, you actually need to get off your butt and start implementing it if you want to see like uh, more concrete changes in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. But yeah, it reminds me a little bit about like when people are yelling at people on like a soccer field and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they're like on the sidelines. And I'm like, you're not actually, you know what they should be doing essentially in your like mind, but you haven't actually done it. So you need to like get off that sideline and go do the thing. Um, but yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. So where in your journey did you write the book along that timeline?
Oh, so it was published in, I want to say 2021. It did take me a couple of years to write it. So I probably started that in 2018. And I think that's where I started truly looking at my goals and being like, okay, what do I actually want to achieve? Like, what are the things that are on my heart that I like want to do? And that was when I was like, oh, I actually want to be an author and write a book. And then that's when I started kind of taking action, albeit slow, on like getting something together and putting it together. Um, so yeah, I think that was probably the catalyst for me for making that change.
Yeah, amazing. Was there anything like else that was driving you? Was it just I want to be an author, or it's like I want to share my voice, or it was like I have a really big opinion on this, or
Probably a mixture of things. I mean, I have always enjoyed like writing, and I just thought that would be something really, really cool to do, to commit to writing a book. And I wasn't sure how that was going to unfold. So that's when I, again, collecting that knowledge, went to some different like workshops and events to figure out how I could get it done, because that for me was a barrier. I was like, cool, if I write this, like, how am I going to get it out there? So that's when I discovered like self-publishing and things like that. But I think it was just being so passionate about personal development and feeling like there was a gap in the literature. I was like, I just want to share this with people. And it gave me an opportunity at the same time to kind of, see how far I had progressed as well and share some of the things I had learned. So I think it was definitely like part selfish, but also wanting to like give something that was hopefully easy to read for beginners, because I felt like it was a book that I would have really liked to have had when I was starting out my journey that I couldn't find.
yeah, I don't think that's selfish. And like without us wanting to achieve our goals, people don't get like the results. Like no one in your community gets anything, no one around you gets anything. Like, so I think it's really important to actually achieve your goals and help lift up everyone around you. um, so in your book, was there how were you writing to people that were more at the beginning of their journey versus how you're saying the other books were more towards the end, or the more experienced people?
I found like some of the books, I'll use like morning routines as an example. I read a couple on, like how to structure your day and things like that. And it was written by like entrepreneurs and, I guess business tycoons. And they were like, I have 3 hours in the morning and I do yoga, meditation, journaling, and all of this great stuff. And I was like, amazing. I'd love to do that. But like my schedule just does not allow for that. And I think that's where sometimes I really valued like the ideas and concepts that were shared in those books. But I was like, it's just not achievable. And like, for someone that's maybe starting out, or, depending on where you're at in your life as well, you might not have, 3, 5 hours that you can spare a day to do those things before, you've got work or your business and all of that great stuff. And I just felt a little bit deflated sometimes reading those books, because I felt like I was letting myself down by not being able to like commit to what they had shared in their book. And I just thought, how about I take it back a notch and, share some of this information and be like, just meet yourself where you're at. Like if you want to practice yoga or meditate, it doesn't have to be for 2 hours a day. It could be for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Like just start adding it into your daily life and then go from there. And I think it's just, reminding people you don't have to do like, you don't have to commit massive amounts of time to see growth, especially in the beginning. It's just those small things and then building up the habit. And then it just becomes part of your everyday life and you don't have to think about it.
For sure. Yeah. And when you're at like the beginning of your journey, anything that you do and ends up having like a bigger impact. I
Yeah.
think it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
now, once later on, you have like a 3% change, even though you did like a 16-day intensive or something, right? And you're like, oh, I'm 3% higher now.
Yeah.
Better now. And I've just found that recently, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah. Because you can like, some people are addicted to something, right? And then you give up the thing, and that's like your whole life fucking changes.
Yeah.
That's just one example, one extreme example. But yeah, so I love that. And I do agree. Those books are very polished. Even now, I look at them and I'm like, I have space in my life, but I don't want to do that. How else
Yeah.
can we do this? So those little micro adjustments are huge. It's just a matter of always looking back and seeing. I think you gotta like instead of don't live in the past, but look back and be like, you have changed. Appreciate it. Then another micro change.
Yeah, for sure. But I totally agree with what you said in terms of like the incremental change. And it's so much easier if you're starting at 0% with something, because like, one thing that you do could add 10%. Whereas, once you start building on all of those habits and like your knowledge and everything like that, like with your course as well, it seems like there's not much of a shift, but I feel like there is internally, or sometimes it's more external, that you see the changes, or it takes a while for it to happen. And I think it's just a reminder for everyone as well. It's like you might not see it instantly, but it's like keep going.
For sure. Yeah. And changing your habits is huge for everything, and like your length of life and extension of life. And it's just really important. And I think giving the reasons why, which is what you kind of go into, like why to do things, and that just changes everything. Is if you don't know the point of like continuing forward, then then why would you even start?
Yeah, 100%.
I love it. I have a question here. So tell me about a time you did something that helped you grow significantly. Maybe others consider it easy, or but whatever. Maybe it's like completely significant to you though.
I, to be honest, I'd say like writing the book.
Yeah,
I think looking back on it, there'd be things that I would do differently, but I think just even like committing to that goal and getting it out there was a massive step. I was very quiet in terms of like sharing that I was writing a book and even like promoting it afterwards. I was like, oh, I've just written a book, it's no big deal. And I think sometimes when it kind of highlighted for me that, the things that come easy to you don't always come easy to others. Um, and that was one of them. I think another thing that really helped me to grow as well was being prepared to let people um, in the sense that when I was growing up, I dealt with like bullying in primary school and in high school, and that kind of left me a little bit distrusting of people, and I kind of struggled to form friendships, especially like female friendships, just because I just made up stories in my mind in terms of like how everyone was, even though that's not true. And I think challenging those thoughts and being like, do I want to keep holding on to this for the rest of my life? Is it serving me? And doing things such as like the Harmony Jade retreat earlier this year and going to different events and meeting people. And I think challenging that has been a huge thing. And while it wasn't a one-off thing in terms of growth, I think it's definitely been a massive shift. I think I have a better, um, yeah, I think just being prepared to like question what you're doing and take yourself off autopilot and the stories that you hold about, whether it's yourself or others, and just be like, is this actually working for me? Do I want to hold on to it? Or what do I need to do to change that? And am I willing to change it? Is a big thing.
that's huge. Yeah. When I have significant or like sorry, similar um story as you know, and it's just like those things come up as kind of like a knee-jerk reaction to you. It's like you don't even know your mind processes the next person you meet as like a threat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, what you're saying is really impactful. It changes everything, and lets you build more relationships and connections. And I think like when you released your book, maybe did you not have people around you that saw the significance in that or anything like that? Like I've released my podcast and my family was like, oh, okay. And then everyone else that like knows how hard that is was like, oh, fuck yeah. Right. That kind of thing. So surrounding yourself with the right people. So that might be why you were kind of like, oh yeah, like I don't know if I should shout this or not.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things, but I think that was also a lot of like projections I was putting onto other people because when I did share it, I had a fair few people reach out and be like, I want to grab a copy. And I think that support surprised me because I just assumed that um, people weren't interested in personal development. And whether it was just to support me as a person or whether it was to read the book, I'm not sure. It could just be sitting on people's bookshelves. Grateful either way. But I think too, that was a realization for me was just the assumptions I've made about other people. Whereas when like with writing the second one, I've been a lot more open about I'm writing a second book and, I'll be a bit more comfortable and confident with sharing it as well. I think too, because I've shared a fair bit of personal information in the first one, just like, stories and things like that, that level of vulnerability at that point in my life was quite daunting, whereas now it's become a little bit easier, or I feel a bit more comfortable. And I think, again, it's just who you're surrounded by, and just that, I don't want to say safety net, but it's just knowing that people have got you, and like it's okay to share that, and the people that need to hear it will be there for you.
100%. Yeah, we got you. um, but yeah, that level of vulnerability, I can only imagine, like, it's just so significant, and yeah, people don't understand, and they don't understand why you would want to share anything personal, I feel like.
Yeah. Um, and like when I had to hand it over to the editor, I was just like, ugh. I was just like, I'm not ready. So it was very, yeah, I don't know, it's not confronting, that's not the word I want to use, but it was just very overwhelming to just like have it out there. Um, and I was like, oh, hopefully I haven't like portrayed anyone like wrong or anything like that. And the people that I had mentioned in there, I had asked for their permission or shared some stories, and hadn't, named names and things like that. But they received it really well. So I was like, that's a relief as well. But yeah, I think vulnerability, if people aren't used to it, I agree with you in terms of they'll be like, why are you sharing that? Like, or you're concerned that it's like, it's too much information. But, it's like, I feel like a lot of us connect to stories. And when other people are open, it gives others the opportunity to be open and connect with others on a deeper level as well. So someone's got to start it.
For sure, yeah. And they could read those words and learn something deeply about themselves, and then it'd be like this whole ripple. Um,
And it's
yeah.
the same with listening to podcasts as well. Like the amount of things that I've heard from your podcast and other podcasts, and you just go, wow, I'm so glad that that conversation was had, and the fact that it was recorded and we all get to listen to it and take something from it is awesome too.
Yeah, of course. It's significant. I think everything what happens for a reason, right? And it gets recorded for a reason, or that moment happens so that, because there's one person out there or however many people that need to hear it. So true. Were there any like significant like criticizes in your mind as you were going through this process that like maybe you've let go of now?
Just in terms of like the personal development journey, or
Even in writing your book or anything like that, like, is there like a story in your mind that maybe used to go on repeat? I guess you're saying with like the people, like how they would react, but was there anything else like telling you can't do it or anything like that?
oh, all right. I guess in terms of like the book writing, one of the reasons why it took a long time was um, the self doubt. Like even with the book that I'm currently writing, until a few months ago, actually, every time I sit down to write, my brain would just be like, who's going to want to read this? Like, this is a waste of time. Like, this is stuff that's been heard before. My brain just would just be like, blah, 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 of just doubt and just like, don't do it. Um, and I think it was really after like Harmony's retreat in Feb, in all honesty, that I realized I'm like, well, what am I writing this book for? It's to help people, I guess, be reconnected with themselves, to let them know that they're not alone. While they're going through their own experiences, there are other people that have probably been through similar. So it's just that comfort. I'm like, even if one person reads the book and picks something up, like for me, I'm like, that's enough. That's enough of a reason for me to keep writing it. And finally, my brain, when I write now, is just quiet. Um, I think, yeah, it's just that doubt, whether it's from external factors or just like your internal voice. I haven't been able to work out which one it is, in all honesty, when it comes to writing. But it's just, yeah, I think you can either let that doubt and fear cripple you, or you can be like, no, it's there because I'm doing what I need to be doing right now. And you just kind of have to navigate it, I suppose.
For sure, yeah, navigate that. Um, what do you like? What is our like ultimate goal with personal development, you think?
I think that's again, I wouldn't be comfortable speaking for everyone.
And
I
yeah,
think it really depends because we all probably get to different points. Like some people might only be willing to like just scratch the surface with it, and that might be enough for them. They might not be comfortable going any further, which is totally fine because I think we're all on our own journey. I guess I'm going to use hiking as an example, Mount Everest. It's like not everyone wants to reach the summit. Not everyone is willing, all of that. For some people, going to the base camp, that's enough. And that's an incredible achievement that no one can take away from you. But other people are prepared to like test their limits and see how far they can go and see if they can reach the peak. And I think it's just meeting yourself where you're at on the journey. Like, doesn't matter what time in your life you start, it's just a way to kind of really, I think, come home to yourself. And it's a journey. And you can, like, it doesn't stop you from having shitty experiences. It doesn't stop anything like that. But I think it just gives you an opportunity to like navigate life with more tools, and it really just takes you off autopilot. So for me, I guess the aim of personal development is just to um, I guess just be more in control of your life and yourself, and just, kind of create a life that has meaning and feels right for you rather than living by everyone else's, rules and doing what they want.
that's a great analogy. And what you said there about it doesn't take away the shitty parts of life or the shitty things. You just kind of get better at handling them.
Yeah.
Really good. I think
Yeah.
that mountain analogy is great. And then, yeah, maybe it's like or like if you're not focusing on it, maybe you're climbing someone else's mountain because it's not like, you haven't come off that autopilot. Um, and then also, yeah, not everyone wants to spend their life climbing Mount Everest. We want to, I guess the ultimate purpose is fulfillment, whatever fulfillment looks like for you, and everyone's mountain looks different.
Yeah. And I think it depends where you're at, like in this lifetime as well. Um, some people I think are willing to look in the mirror and like are open to like challenging their perspectives and be maybe more open minded and things like that. Whereas other people, they're content in their bubble, which is totally fine. Because, I think that's a really cool thing. Life, you can live it however you want. Um, and yeah, it's like however you want to use personal development, what parts of it you use, and how you want it to help create your life is totally up to you. It's just the tools are there and the opportunity is there to use it, and how you use it is up to you.
Sure, yeah. And you can say yes to anything or no to anything and change your path.
Yeah, which
So
is
good.
wild.
It is so wild. So wild. I love it. Yeah, so I guess everyone's on their own journey. And like how can we respect that? Or like do you think that's a big part of personal development, being able to respect that?
Yeah, I mean, happy to share a personal example. And Jesse, my husband, will attest to this. So when I first found it, I was like, babe, you've got to try this stuff. Like, you've got to try the yoga, the meditation, and, like there's all of these things. And I was kind of focused a little bit on what he could implement in his life. And I wasn't coming from a bad place of wanting to control him or anything like that. And to his credit, like, he's amazing. I'm not just saying this because it's recorded, but like he tried yoga and tried meditation and things like that, and indulged me. But I realized probably 6 months to a year later, so it wasn't a quick realization, that I was like, it's not up to me to try and get him to change his life. If he wants to make changes, like that's for him to do. It's not for me to kind of micromanage him. And I think I was just projecting onto him the changes I wanted to make in my life. And I just kind of went one day, oh, this is not good. Like, this isn't fair to him, because I didn't want to make it seem like I thought he was, shit at life. And, like it's up to him how he wants to spend his time and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I think I'm just projecting the changes I want to make in my life onto you, or blaming you for the change that I'm not making, which isn't fair. So I think with personal development, it's that personal journey. And I think you can speak about things and share it, but not, it's not necessarily appropriate to shove it down other people's throats. Which is probably what I was doing with Jesse. Yeah, so I think it's just being mindful of, you can maybe suggest things to people, but you can't control them just as much as it's hard to like make changes in your own life. Like it's damn near impossible to make someone else change. And I think I've just kind of gone with that philosophy and, just if people want to take stuff on, great. If they don't, then I'm not going to try and force them. So I guess that's just my level of respect now. It's definitely changed once I've um, moved through things.
Mm. That's a vulnerable share. Thanks. I think that's true for all of us women that try and change our partners all of a sudden once we get into personal development. And I think I haven't seen it though, to be fair, but I was like, I reckon husbands that get into it first would do the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
You get so passionate about it and you're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, why wouldn't anyone want to do this? Everyone
And
wants.
I think I
Yeah.
totally agree with that because that was my thing. I was like, it's just from a passion and love point of view. And I was just like, I feel so much better as a human. I was like, you gotta try this. And then I was like, I can't, like, that's not for me to do that. Yeah, and it's just, and I think it's hard because I feel like your partner would be the same. Like they're very indulging of us
Mm-hmm.
in such a loving way, and so they don't want to be like, can you just like back off? So I think that's
Yeah.
like, I think if he just got to me like no, flat out, I would have been like, oh, okay, cool, and just like let a lot earlier.
I
But
don't know
that's
though.
all right.
I'm still like, do you want to change still? And he's like, no. And I'm like,
Great chat, great chat.
fuck. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with them either. It's just that, like, yeah, you're like,
Yeah,
look, this is amazing. But they're coming from a different baseline and their model of
yeah,
the world is so different.
yeah,
They're like, my partner's so comfortable in who he is. And I'm like, I went through a
yeah,
whole time where I wasn't comfortable with who I was. And I had
yeah.
all these emotions of anxiety and shit. And I'm like, okay, I need this stuff and you might not need this stuff. So,
Yes, yeah,
but
yeah,
as you raise your vibration, they change. They change so much. Just don't tell
yeah. And I
people.
think too, like they notice it,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. And I think that was another part of the realization, like later on, was cool, I'll implement this for me, but it's going to have a ripple effect of the people
Mm-hmm.
around you. And, people might, I know it's a cliche, but I feel like it's a cliche for a reason. When people go, you've changed, I'm like, amazing. Like, I'm glad I'm not staying the same or stagnant. And I feel like you just kind of come more of yourself, and people might not be ready to see that level of you. And they might be like, thanks, but no thanks. But that doesn't mean that you need to stop being more of who you are, because you're
Mm.
going to attract in those people that are ready for that version of you too.
Beautiful. Yeah, I definitely agree. And people will fall away, and that's just a big part of it. And that's actually a good sign, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Because then, if they hadn't fallen away, then you wouldn't meet the people that are in your life now, or maybe, the previous like season as well. It all happens for a reason. Another cliche. Just can't help myself.
It's true though. It's so good. Um, Amazing. I love it. There's something I wanted to cover there, but we'll go back in a minute. I'm forgetting it. Anyway, so let's talk about the next thing. What's something like bold or brave or outside your comfort zone that you're chasing now? Like, what's the next edge? Is there anything other than the next book? I'm assuming that's doing it.
I mean, this I've like shared very previously, and this probably isn't the best example. And I'll just put like a little trigger warning in terms of like the pregnancy loss. But I think trying for a family, and like last month we had a miscarriage, and I think sharing that, I think just getting used to like um being a little bit more vulnerable about the things that are going on. I guess by way of like tangent background, like usually if I've gone and had like a Reiki session and things like that in the past, they're always like, your throat chakra is blocked. And it's like there's unsaid things, and people will usually say to me like, you got to speak up because you've got good ideas and things like that. I'm like, yeah, I know, whatever. I don't mean whatever as in disregarding it, but I'm like, I know, but I still just haven't felt ready yet to share the voice. So I think it's just being prepared to talk about things that kind of come to light. And I guess just that probably goes back to being vulnerable with things. I'm kind of like, oh, well, it kind of comes easy to me now to like share things because I'm like, let's open the dialogue on things that might be taboo topics or, share personal examples because how else are people going to connect and be like, oh, I'm not the only one going through this stuff at the moment. If we just all pretend that life is like, one big rainbow, people that are struggling and we all have our moments where we go through shit, unfortunately, um, then they're just going to feel very alone and like they can't speak to people. So I think it's just finding my voice a little bit more and just sharing things is probably like the next thing that I'm kind of experimenting with.
I love it. And you're here sharing your voice. How's it
Yeah.
feel?
I thought I'd be nervous, but I was actually really excited for this.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, we're here together to hang out, so that's so good. But that's why I'm here too, to share my voice. Like, as in, and yet then your throat chakra, there it is. It's closing up. Gets all like closed up. Yeah. The other thing you can do if you're not going to start a podcast is go scream sing in your car when you're driving. Yes, it works.
And then just don't have your dash cam on because then when people listen to it, if there's an
Oh,
accident or something, I've done that before and I'm like, sorry about my voice.
oh, that's so funny. Oh God, I can't get a dash cam because that'll be me like all the time.
Or if I'm swearing at cars in front and I'm like, I've done that before and I'm like, see, look at this silly stuff that they did. And it's just me like swearing.
That's
I'm like,
hilarious.
maybe just like play it with the sound off so you don't hear my
Yeah.
F words.
Can
But
you take
yeah.
the sound off? It's just, yeah, that would be great.
Oh, probably not. I guess it makes it entertaining. That's what I told myself. But
Yeah,
yeah.
like those Russian, I like watching those Russian dash cam ones that they're swearing in Russian and something crazy happens, like someone rolls over their like dash, so their bonnet. Sorry, I can't think of the Australian word. Yeah, but so funny. I love that tangent. Okay, so I love it. Was there any like advice or suggestions you'd want to give to someone that's like starting their journey?
Um, I think just meet yourself where you're at. Everyone was a beginner, and I think there's a lot out there, a lot of shiny objects. And because personal development is such a broad topic, it can be amazing but overwhelming at the same time because you kind of go, oh, I want to fix my life overnight and make all of these changes. And I was definitely guilty of that at the start as well because I was like, oh, there's all of this stuff that I want to do in like my relationships at work and my, like health and fitness. And I was like, I want to do all of this at all at the same time. And it isn't sustainable. So I think just pick one thing and then implement it, test and evaluate to see how it's going, and then move on to the next thing rather than trying to do everything at the same time. And I think don't be afraid of, trying things out. And if it doesn't work for you, being okay with that, because I think it's, like there are different modalities and things like that, where people are like, you have to do this and you have to love it. And I'll give you a perfect example for meditation. There have been times in my life where, like guided meditations, I can sit down for like 10 minutes, half an hour, and it works. It's great. And there are other times where I'm just like, nah, I'll go for like a walking meditation and just go for a walk or something like that. And I think it's just acknowledging that not everything that's out there is going to feel good for you and being okay with that and just keep persisting until you do find the things that work for you, is really helpful as well. And just because you stick to one thing doesn't mean you have to have it in your life forever. You can pick things up and drop it off as you need to.
That was so well said. And that is something I've been preaching or whatever saying lately too. Like those habits don't have to stay around forever and pick them up when they feel good, not when they feel shit. I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't push through a little bit of discomfort at the beginning, but
Yeah.
yeah, like when it's good, do it. When it's not, adjust it.
Yeah. Like I think as well, we probably all have our own word for it. Mine is definitely should. I notice if I'm shooting myself a metric shit ton, then I'm doing something that I genuinely don't want to do. And I'm only trying to do it because I think it looks good or it's for someone else. And I think whatever your should word is for you, take a step back and be like, why am I actually doing this as well? Because it's probably a sign that it's not something that you need in your life, whether it's permanently or just right now. It's just, yeah, being aware of that too.
Oh my God, incredible. I'm just going to end this here because that was perfect. Let's just wrap it up then. So where can people find you online so they can know when your next book's coming out?
You can catch me on Instagram. That's pretty much the only
There we
social
are.
media platform I'm on. To be honest, I'm not a TikToker. Showing my age a little bit here. Over the hedge, over the
Don't
ledge.
tell it.
No.
Don't tell them.
So yeah, you can connect with me on Instagram at Tash Leam, with an underscore in between Tash and Leam. So feel free to slide into my direct messages and ask questions or connect. Um, yeah, and you can find my book on Amazon, Dimmicks, Booktopia, or if you're in Perth, in Morley, there's a cafe that stocks them as well called Green Street Cafe, and they have good drinks and food there as well.
Amazing. Yeah, Perthies, go check it out. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. That was a really good chat that I think a lot of people will love. So it was really nice having you.
Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate chatting to you.
It was so good. Share your voice more. It was amazing. Thank you so much for listening. I do hope you enjoyed that. We are exploring our comforts and our edges with every episode, every guest, and every episode I do by myself. If you have enjoyed this, please follow us on Spotify, leave a 5-star review or a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to us. We get to grow and have more informative guests on, more provocative guests if that's what you want. I am so down to see where this grows. In the meantime, follow me on Instagram at amanda.petra__, and I would love to chat with you in the DMs. What hit home, what didn't, what came to mind. It would be really cool. So I will see you there. And thank you so much. See you in the next episode.